We're going live now.
You can do it now. It's the green button at the bottom of your screen there.
Just says host disabled participant screen sharing, but it's okay. We'll figure it out.
Welcome everybody to session 1, stream 1, creating a collective community. Our first speaker today is Ron Chhinzer. Ron will be speaking about leveraging community connections to address intimate partner violence. If you're in the wrong session, please navigate to the sessions tab in the blue bar on your left, and you can look through the menu to find the session that you're looking for. At the end of the session, we will open up for Q&A. Please type your questions in the dedicated Q&A box within the broadcast window. Ron Chhinzer is a service veteran police officer and a national gang prevention subject matter expert with over 19 years of law enforcement experience. He has worked in various specialized police units, including the Primary Response Unit, the Community Response Unit, Tavis Neighborhood Policing Unit, the Criminal Investigative Bureau, the Community Mobilization Unit, the Divisional Policing Support Unit, the Major Crime Unit, the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force, and was the founding member of the Toronto Police Service's Integrated Gang Prevention Task Force, where he was a key and founding member who designed and implemented one of the world's largest gang exit strategies. During his policing career, Ron developed, written, and successfully implemented over 7 government grants to reduce gun and gang violence, sexual assault and harassment, and human trafficking. Ron is an international speaker on altruistic leadership development, impactful policing, and crime prevention through economic development initiatives. Ron has a college diploma in Police Foundations Leadership from Humber College, certified in Foundations of Leadership by the Toronto Police Service, and certified in Team Building by the Ontario Police College. He also has several certifications in various aspects of project management, grant proposal development, and various law enforcement specific training. With over 20 years of consistent volunteer service, Ron continues to coach a variety of youth sports, chair various neighborhood committees, and serves as a director on several boards focused on community improvement. In August 2022, Ron received the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Community Service Award from the Canadian House of Commons for his professional contributions to vulnerable populations and his consistent and impactful volunteer work. We are so pleased to welcome Ron today.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that introduction, and thank you everybody for logging in and joining in this this conference, I should say. My background is pretty extensive, and today when I was asked to be able to participate in this and volunteer and give some good feedback, what I wanted to do is I wanted to briefly just share with you information. It's going to sound like it's a lot of information, but all of this information is to be able to help you identify your opportunities, or what's called a hook for a change. That being in particular with females involved in gangs. Now I'm going to share my screen now. You're going to take a look at it, and it's going to be my PowerPoint presentation. It'll be nice and simple, and I'll talk along as we go through this. So to give you a quick, let me just make this bigger. So with this screen, what you're going to see is it's the female gang experience. It's very, very complicated, but it's also very simple, and it ties into so many other things. Before we get there, though, I'll just give you a quick background on myself, has already been mentioned. I am a subject matter expert on gang prevention and intervention. To give you an idea of some of the data sets and where this information is coming from, all of the information you're getting today is going to be coming from academically sourced peer-reviewed articles, as well as industry experts, as well as our own experience and our own data collection. In 2017, I was tasked by the Toronto Police Service with creating a gang exit strategy. Over the course of 4 years, we grew that strategy to not only be very impactful, but it also became, as far as we know, the largest in the world. We had over 1,000 people participate in that. 80% of that, or 88% of the people that participated were under the age of 21. 75% were male and 25% were female. Now, there are differences between the female and the male population that participated in our program. And how we identified these people was a key and critical component. If you Google gang risk factors, you're going to find an academic publication from Public Safety Canada, which outlines 36 risk factors over 5 stages of life. Now, these risk factors, the more of them that you have, the more likely you are to become a criminal or a victim of a crime, particularly when it comes down to gun and gang violence and human trafficking. Those two, unfortunately, are tied into the gang lifestyle. So let's get into what exactly is a gang. For bare bone purposes, a gang is as simple as three simple things. A gang is a group of two or more people that have got together to conspire to control a territory, deal drugs, and collect a debt. Now, gangs do much more than that, but at its very core, that's the people and group we're dealing with. So always keep this at the center. If you look at all of the gang crime, it resorts around any one of these three. Now, they have expanded into sex trafficking, into e-crimes, into frauds, but they always come back to a control mechanism down to these three. And these control mechanisms are critical, especially when it comes into recruiting females. Now, let's stick to the data and history of actual females involved in gangs. Now, women in general, historically, young women have remained relatively invisible in the gang literature for a variety of reasons, including a primary research focus on male gang activity, offending, violence, and gang membership being regarded as male behavior, and limited police attention paid to female gang membership. Now, most of them are assumed to remain in the exterior circle of the gang. However, the rate of female gang involvement is assumed to be approximately 10 times lower in Canada than it is in the United States. In 2002, it was estimated that 6% of gang members were thought to be female, ranging from a low 3% in Ontario to a high 12% in British Columbia. However, the true number may be closer to a third of all gang members. And what I can tell you is with our gang exit strategy, like I mentioned before, 25% of all of our participants were female, which contradicts some of the academic numbers, but also supports that a potential 1/3 of all gang members are female. Early research studies described young women as adopting fairly stereotypical, gender-specific, and marginalized roles in the gang. For example, being sex objects, girlfriends, groupies, gun and drug holders, alibis, and bait, rather than adopting equal responsibilities to male gang members. On occasion, alternative descriptions developed of tomboys, females who demonstrated their physical abilities and proved they could hang out and fight alongside the males, or gang girls as they're called in some gangs. However, over the last number of years, research studies have observed a variety in the position of young women that they adopt. And this is illustrated by how female gang members have more recently begun to develop more central and independent roles within the gang, including drug dealing, recruiting, and enforcing. Some young women are respected as being tough individuals and are seen as an asset to the gang. Now, when it comes down to risk factors, the importance of knowing the risk factors is to be able to identify not only who is on the path to involvement within gangs or human trafficking, but also where are our hooks for change and our leverage points to be able to mitigate them. Now, young women are more likely to come from disadvantaged backgrounds, have experiences of marginalization, and have multiple family problems, including a history of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse in the home. They also witness physical violence and substance abuse in their homes and may have a family member who is gang involved or has been incarcerated. Further, in the school domain, school commitment, attachments, or expectations, and limited educational opportunities are more influential for females than males when it comes down to being gang involved. Excuse me, sorry. Now, when it comes down to their actual roles within a gang, it's variety. But however, it's been these four that have been mimicked all over studies all over the world, as well as in our own experience. Because gang-affiliated women weren't as closely monitored by police, they began to be used in certain gang activities. Drug mules, decoys, firearm carriers, sex trafficking, recruiting, and grooming. This approach was fairly successful because not only were police not monitoring the women as closely, but the police were also more interested in arresting the actual gang members to their knowledge. With less heat on women associated with gangs, their roles over time have begun to grow substantially. Now, what are the pathways for a young woman to get involved into a gang lifestyle? Young women have reported becoming involved through peer pressure, either being intimidated or beat into gang membership, or even sexually groomed by more sophisticated members, often by boyfriends and male relatives. Young women may also join gangs because they are looking for a social life for fun and excitement. Female gang members have also described their neighborhoods as lacking resources and activities, and so the gang provides an important social outlet addressing boredom and frustration. The gendered nature of the processes surrounding gang involvement and revolving around hypermasculinities and sexualized femininities. A gendered hierarchy enables the success of the gang, and sexual exploitation is used as a means to achieve monetary success by providing a service in high demand while preserving male power and control. Females may act more aggressively to demonstrate courage and to gain respect, but a young woman's main capital on the streets is her measure of control and a reputation for handling herself. And those with a strong need for social acceptance by male gang members will do whatever it takes to maintain close ties with male gang members. This may account for the elevated delinquent activity of young women in a more mixed gendered gangs, and some studies have recorded increasing equality in the prevalence of male and female acts of violence. Again, the natural progression to becoming equal violent partners. Now, what happens to females when they get in, and what really changes specifically to their scope? Now, the experiences of young women within the gang and the potential long-term consequences highlight the fact that gang memberships represent not just an opportunity for escaping or attempting to reduce various social injuries, but also a mechanism for additional injury. Gang membership increases the odds of women experiencing domestic violence, having and caring for children at a young age, and marrying a gang-affiliated partner, and also unstable employment. They also have a higher risk of incarceration. Now, when it comes into disengagement strategies, what are some of the things that we utilized in our gang exit program that was from evidence-based strategies that really helped us work with them? Was the most basic things, the 5 basic things that popped up for us. Now, studies examining why and how females disengage from gangs have generally focused on 3 areas: motherhood, criminal justice system involvement, and or experiences of victimization. Each of these may act as a hook for change, assisting in the process of leaving the gang. Now, hook for change is something you should really keep at the forefront of everything you do. All of this education, these risk factors, they're for you to identify a hook for a change in a person. For most people, they call them aha moments. So whenever you recognize a hook for a change or an aha moment in somebody else, it's pivotal that you capitalize on that opportunity. Now, Canadian studies have also found that pregnancy influenced a young woman's decisions to get out and stay out of the gang. The latter indicated that they did not want their child to be affected or influenced by the gang's negative lifestyle, and they wanted to make their lives better in order to protect them. However, the physical separation of the institution can be beneficial for gang-involved women because it can result in an opportunity to contemplate their future, and the gang is no longer a primary support structure. Because of victimization of females in gangs relative to males, there may be more crisis moments or opportunities for hooks for change to occur. Young women may recognize themselves to be victims of escalating violence and start to identify the negative consequences related to harm due to violence. The key to this is often either personal experiences as direct victims or violent acts, or witnessing violent acts against fellow gang members. And this one became a very interesting topic for us when we started to do the research one. It's called coercive control. Now, this is from a study done in the United Kingdom, and it's the only study of its kind, really, and it's very in-depth on what exactly is happening with females. And coercive control is something that can be utilized today in not only gang membership, but also female victimization in domestic violence and terrorism and kidnapping and sexual assault and violence. And this kind of built a bigger picture for us, which I think is very important to include in here. Now, historically, associated with domestic abuse, coercive control is built on a foundation of trust, where the victim shares intimate experiences and information with the perpetrator, including personal dreams and fears. Now, it's different from other forms of abuse because abusers leverage the privileged and trusted information to exert influence or control over their victim. Young men in gangs show an interest in or feigned concern about young women and girls. They target these children and deliberately foster a dependency, which leads to an emotional commitment. Gang members regularly use social media to recruit young women and girls from all backgrounds to parties. Here, they are either plied with drink and drugs and sexually exploited, often by several gang members at a time. They're often too drunk to give consent or too frightened to say no, and the rape is filmed. Armed with evidence of the girl or young woman's alleged promiscuity, gang members then threaten to expose them by posting the footage and their personal information on social media. These young women and girls are then bombarded with sexually explicit texts and phone calls from predatory strangers. Technology can also be used to groom young women and girls by creating an impression of a romantic relationship. Once in the gang fold, the same technology is used to intimidate and maintain around-the-clock surveillance. Equipped with their personal numbers, elder gang members are able to track young women and girls through GPS apps on their phones. Always knowing where they are and able to text or call at any time, gang members can make demands at a moment's notice while monitoring the girls to check on their whereabouts and ensure they are following instructions. This creates the impression that the perpetrator is always present, even though they cannot be seen. This fear traps the girls in a gang life and forces them to comply with demands of gang members. Now, there's 7 themes that came out of a study of female gang members, and this became a very particular topic. I believe it was taken from Africa. And what happens is traditionally in North America, whenever people try to speak with female gang members voluntarily for these academic and evidence-based studies, the male counterparts will either want to be in the room or they don't allow these females to be able to speak openly about things. Alternatively, females in a gang, they do not tell any sort of social worker or academic person what's actually happening out of fear for repercussion, but also they have a strong emotional connection to their abusers. But this particular study was from Africa, where they ended up talking to gang members who voluntarily provided information, female gang members. And in there, they came out with 7 themes that tended to be the leading in the industry. The first one is that women and girls seek belonging with gangs. They're also seeking resources and security, and that has a lot to do with their backgrounds. The critical point here is that female gang members are not coerced to join gangs. They do so for the most part willingly in a similar fashion to their male counterparts. One big difference, however, is that the route to gang membership for girls and young women is often the result of developing a romantic relationship with a gang member. The second one is sex is a common currency in gang interactions involving females. Sex provides a direct utility for female gang members to offer or to be forced to provide. Tales of rape and sexual abuse within the gangs were depressingly common across all of the interviews. Initial encounters, many of which constitute forms of coerced sexual activity, are critical rites of passage for many young women making their way into gang networks. Women barter their bodies to secure wider membership and acceptance in the gang, but at the same time, they're also targeted for sexual violence. Every one of the female gang members had a history of abuse. They had, it's quite literally giving birth to a new generation of gang members. Sadly, numerous interviews reported that unwanted children, often from different fathers, were the result of multiple sexual liaisons. They're also the female gang participants became enmeshed in gangs and are often under considerable control and surveillance. Scarring and gang identification tattoos in visible places, sometimes the face, neck, or upper chest, ensures that the gang membership is literally carried with you. That makes getting a job in the formal sector or easy acceptance back into the mainstream community life outside of gang areas very difficult to achieve. Female gang members also participated in crime and violence. Women reported being involved in robberies, drug dealing, and even murder. Women sometimes acted as lures to draw individual members of opposing gangs so that they could be killed. In a number of cases, women themselves did the killing. When boyfriends and protectors are killed, the result may be that women who are linked to them are vulnerable to a wider sexual abuse and violence within the gang, as well as potentially outside of it now that they lost any form of physical protection. Women and girls, while being members and confidants of male gangsters, are largely excluded from wide leadership positions. Now, the research suggests that research suggests that position a female holds in the gang hierarchy will depend largely on the position of her male partner in the gang. The girls in gangs have shifted from tertiary roles to more active roles where they are directly involved in drug dealing, recruiting, and violent crime. Girls and women are intentionally sexually exploited by a profit-producing gang enterprise, while male members often use female members for the purchase of sales and goods of illegal substances like drugs and weapons. Girls and young women suffer much more pervasively from the effects of gang membership than boys and young men do. Sexual exploitation of female gang members, both at home and within their gangs, is an important reason to consider female gang membership a serious social concern that requires comprehensive solutions and support. Their behaviors are interpreted as one of 2 extremes. Either they're very violent or immoral and sexually promiscuous. The truth is far more complex. Women and girls involved in gangs are often both the perpetrator and the victim, actively recruiting other young people to avoid their own sexual and criminal exploitation. And it's that last part that stood out to me the most. They are actively grooming and recruiting other young women to prevent themselves from being continued down the path of victimization within the gang. If they can bring in another girl, it relieves the pressure on them to have to perform the duties that they don't want to perform. Now, here comes the guidance on the intervention, and then we can get more to a bigger question and answer period, and I can share some actually impactful stories for you. But when it comes down to guidance on prevention and intervention, again, this was taken from a conglomerate of many different studies that we've utilized and have great success with. The first one is that they should be provided in a safe and nurturing environment, including a single-sex space favorable to therapeutic change. They should include content which reflects both the risk factors and the realities of their daily lives, multidisciplinary, comprehensive, holistic, and solutions-focused to address the multiplicity of young women's risks, strengths, and experiences are absolutely essential. Your program should focus on promoting self-esteem, healthy assertive behavior, and self-reliance to build resilience against future victimization and provide the opportunities for empowerment, growth, and explorations of identity. They should foster respectful and positive relationships as an important device for promoting change, facilitating association with alternative peer groups, and utilizing mentors, particularly women with similar experiences who can identify with and advise them. They should include working with the families, especially the mother-daughter relationship, and engagement of other adults supporting the longer-term resilience of these young women with attention to improving interaction and communication, providing structure and accountability, and facilitating opportunities. And lastly, they should continue to combat the gang lore, spreading the ideas that the gang is a safe haven and that one cannot leave without serious consequences to self, family, and or friends. Now, that's the high level. That's the high level, really condensed for you. I'll come back to here. Can you see me? All right, that being said, that is a very, very high level, but it's a really touch point, and I'm hoping from that you could take away some of the key risk factors as well as your hooks for change and your aha moments. And with all of that, when we have that, the most important thing to do is to be able to recognize it in other people and not yourself. Now, again, we have great success in our programs, but that didn't happen overnight. That took us 4 years to get there. The 6 grants that I wrote, 4 provincial and 2 federal, they were filled with failure for the most part. But once we figured out what we were doing, we realized some key and core elements. And this is what I'll advocate to everybody. Initially, when we started to develop these programs, we had these big picture ideas. We wanted to integrate municipal level of governments with provincial and federal. And we really tried to do that. However, we were constantly met by failure in those high level partnerships because of a variety of reasons. And number one, resources. Every partner group we wanted to partner with wanted to know, what is this going to cost us? How long do we have to stay committed? And what are we going to do if the services that we offer have such a flood intake of people? And how are we going to account for that? How are we going to scale our services? And it caused us huge issues. And for years, we kept banging our heads on a wall. But where we started to get our real drivers and our real movements change and our real results was when we connected peer to peer. So we got away from the bureaucracy, and what we did is we utilized this risk factor chart to identify as many risk factors as we can in an individual person. Then we took their age, we took their sex, and we took their postal code. And just through a simple Google search from a postal code, you can find a variety of resources. So for example, with young women, if we had a history of sexual abuse, a history of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, poor attachment or limited attachment to positive peer role models, no academic success, we would kind of try to find as many things as we can to mitigate those risks. So we would find them a localized drug addiction clinic. We would find them a local mentor out of a volunteer group of over 100 people to help them get on their own feet and write a resume and get a social insurance number. We would continue to help foster positive relationships with other females within their environment that might have come from the same upbringing and also got out of that path. And we would continue to offer these mitigating services as much as possible, but we wouldn't take on the ownership of the actual work. We were merely a connection point because we needed to ensure that the people we were helping wanted to help. The reality is, out of the 1,000 people that we had that participated in our program and continue to participate in our program, some of them have a very short life cycle. You know, success for us is defined as somebody who has been offered the help and reaches back and says, I'll take it. And what we do from there is we provide them the resources, the connections, the encouragement, empowerment, but it's ultimately up to them to want to pursue their own path. And we look for these hooks for change. For myself, I never close a door on anybody. I might call a gang member or have an interaction with a gang member, male or female, offer them a helping hand, and they might take it. But if they don't take it, I always say the door is always open, regardless of the circumstance that they're in. The reality is, for us in first world countries to have a problem like gang violence, it's unacceptable. We have every opportunity here for people to succeed. North America is a country where people can succeed. We have running water, we have food in our fridges, but we have deeper social concerns when it comes down to generational poverty, generational violence, and generational victimization. Now, it's important to always have that door open and be sincere in how you do it. But at the same time, you have to find this balancing point of, do we do all the work or does this person do all the work? And there's always a 50-50, but you have to have clients and participants that are willing to have skin in the game. You'll find you'll spend 10 hours with somebody a week and they'll just regress right back to their old habits and rituals. And in some other people, you can give them half an hour once and they're set on the right path for life. And I have hundreds of those stories to share, but I'll leave this moment now for questions and any comments from anybody else in the forum.
Wow. Thank you so much for that incredible information and just the passion with which you articulate some very deep sentiments. You know, I really appreciate just how you articulated that we're seeing this occur generationally. And that is something that in order for us to affect future generations, we have to start now. And we can't forge a new way forward unless we connect deeply with our roots, which have brought us to where we are today. And I certainly really appreciate what you said, that here in North America, there's almost no excuse for why we have allowed this. But then again, there are these generational things that maybe have gone undetected in a few generations, but surface again, whether that's through abuse, whether that's through anger or rejection or addiction or mental health. And then they find themselves bubbling up within our community. So thank you so much, Ron, for spearheading this incredible mountain that requires great change, and for dedicating your heart and passion. I can hear in the sound of your voice how much connection there is to that. And I'm sure that seeing that change take place, and like you said, where you define success is when you've offered help, you've offered services, you've offered the connections for success. But it's when people accept that success, take it, and utilize the resources that are available, that's considered success. And sometimes that is not the measure that most of us would hold ourselves to. We would say, as long as we've done our part, we've done it. But that really isn't what fosters change. And certainly with your incredible background and the success stories that I can see just in learning more about your bio and hearing what you've come up with, you have experienced a lot of success and change. And so again, thank you for that. One of the things I at this time, like you said, we want to poll the audience. We want to engage questions. Ron is here. He is a subject matter expert. He has years of wisdom and experience, and we want to be able to glean from him and learn, again, build on best practices, on strategies that have been successful, and how do you break into this type of environment. So please, if you are watching, throw your questions in, anything. There's no silly questions, and I will be here to moderate those questions. And I just want to start off with the first question, Ron, is because generationally it is a very impactful concept, and we are required to look down at the roots. You had mentioned something in here about motherhood and motherhood affecting a lot of people in terms of that being an exit point to gang violence or being involved with gangs. But maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that and what happens to a mother, let's say, that maybe isn't in the gang world, but has a child that has come or that is involved in that, and how does that impact the families or mothers of children that are in gangs?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is one of our most impactful stories for me. It's one of the ones you talk about, the passion to want to do this. Look, I think everybody here on here is sometimes we get caught up in the bureaucracy of the space that we're in. We're tied up in our career. We want to have these programs that work and we want to have success to say, look what we did, and we want to move up in our organization. I kind of gave that up a while ago because for me, in this particular example that I'll tell you, in this story, I'll tell you, you can have your day job when you're out there and you're talking peer to peer and you're dealing with your budgets and your strategy and your metrics and all that good stuff. But when you talk to real people and you realize there's something I can do to help, and you offer it and they take it, that feeling, you can't put a price on it. And I'll tell you about this. There was a school in Toronto. They called our office and they had said, look, we have a 12-year-old kid who put a knife to a girl's throat and threatened to kill her. And he's facing a 19-day suspension. The reason why it's 19 days is because 20 days is an expulsion. So they call us in and they said, look, this kid, we think he's on your path to gang involvement, because a part of what we did was I spent a year doing massive education, municipally, provincially, and federally, for what are the things, the hooks for change that we're looking for, and what are the things that we can offer. So this was very early on in our project stage. The school calls me, I show up there with my partner, and we sit down. And when we sit down with this 12-year-old kid, his mother comes in as well. And they sits down and, I want you to think in yourself right now, what do you picture a 12-year-old kid to look like that put a knife to another girl's throat? Some people picture this monster. This kid was barely 4'10", 90 pounds. And when he walks in, he's wearing, raggedy sweater. And as he comes in very polite. He wasn't rude. He wasn't mean. He says, hello, sir. How are you? Could not maintain eye contact with me. He sat down. I talked to his mom. And we do kind of a really excessive thing here. So it's a longer story, but I'll tell it to you. For anybody who reads the 5 love languages, anybody read that? I utilize that with every gang member that I deal with, as well as victim of human trafficking, because the number one thing is I need to communicate effectively with the person I'm working with. So I need to communicate in a way that they value the language. So I give mom and son this 5 love languages quiz. They answer it. And as I'm tabulating what method of communication do they, respond most to, I also give them our gang risk factor sheet. And I ask them to fill it out. And like always, 2 things happens. One, I understood what languages that they speak. Now, the son speaks words of affirmation, which means words work for him. On the risk factors, and this has been repeated almost 100 out of 100 times, the parents have more risk factors from the kids that are involved in gangs and sex trafficking. And I want you to think to your own life. For those of us with immigrant parents, my parents immigrated to the country in the 70s. And when I learned of their life, there's no way I could do that now. All right. The point is, life is supposed to get easier. And when I look at my kids, I say, man, you're so spoiled compared to me. But that is the path to life. That's no difference for these gang members. They've just aged out of it with the parents. So mom has more risks than the kid. The kid is actually very polite. Now I know he speaks words of affirmation. So I talked to the kid and I said, tell me about your everyday. And we kind of reverse engineer what his life looks like. And this is not to victimize the kid. What he did was absolutely very terrible and wrong, but he's still a kid and we still have a chance here. All right. His brain hasn't fully developed. The neural pathways haven't connected to have him solidified in a place of trauma. He's got issues for sure, but I want you to picture this. This is his everyday. He wakes up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Mom is out the door. He's living with his grandma and his older uncle, who's bipolar and schizophrenic and also a gang member. Now there's multiple kids in the house. So when he wakes up, he can't even watch TV, but he's the oldest of 3 siblings. So by 8:30, he's out the door on the bus with his 2 younger siblings. He's got to drop them off at school and he gets to school early. Now, every time he gets to school early, there is another gang family there, kids that are his age, that beat him up regularly. Maybe once a week he gets beat up. He's okay with that. But in school, this girl that he put a knife to her throat, she calls him stupid every day. Now let's go back to the love language here. Physical acts don't bother this kid. This kid can understand getting beat up. He understands that part of life. But saying words to him is terribly impactful to him, especially negative words, to the point that he tells his bipolar schizophrenic gang member uncle, who gives him a knife and says, you need to show this girl and teach her a lesson. Now that is not a positive role model. So he takes the knife, goes to school, holds it to her throat, throws the knife in a garbage. So now we're talking to this kid and now I understand words matter. So I start to build them up. And as you start to build them up and you recognize the positive things in a kid, one of the things I like to do with kids, I always paint a 5-year plan. Now you need to keep in mind that both with females and males that live in this lifestyle, tomorrow doesn't exist. The fight is today. So when you start talking about long-term plans, for some of them, they've accepted that they will not live past the age of 21 because no picture has been painted for them. So we paint a picture. So with this kid, I asked him and I said, what do you want to do when you get older? And this is a surprise to a lot of people. So the kid says, I want to be a French teacher. And I said, why a French teacher? And he says, well, my French teacher is the only one who says hi to me every day. Words, communication, effectiveness, impact. So we get a hold of the French teacher. We call him in. I have a little side conversation. I said, look, you have a tremendous impact on this kid. Do you mind taking him under your wing for maybe half an hour a week and teaching him what needs to be done for him to become a French teacher? And when we talked to this kid about getting good grades in school, getting into teachers college and the path to education to be able to be a French teacher, for the first time, we created a blueprint and a way out of the lifestyle that he's perceived for himself, because his everyday is so terrible for him that he just thinks, man, if this is life, I don't even want to participate in it. But once we did this, we had huge success with the kid. Now let's go back to the mom here. Mom was a historical gang member. She comes from a historical gang family, but her total perspective changed here. The police, we were not the enemy here. We were offering her genuine and sincere help, and she needed it very badly. And this is where the mom, my heart broke for her, but also I recognized how much fight are in people like her. So as I talked to the mom, I said, tell me about your life. What happened to you? And she said she had lost her job. She had lost her house. She has 3 kids, all from one father. And she was still in a relationship with the father, but she had to, after losing her job, she had to leave her house and go live with her mother. And her and her 3 kids live in one bedroom. Her bipolar brother is in and out the door, and her mom is upset that they're there, and they live in community housing. So I go and ask the mom, I said, well, why did you lose your job? She lost her job because she's got cancer. This is her 2nd time fighting cancer, but she still is fighting and fighting and fighting for her kids. And once we realized she was the very first case we had where we offered more support services to her in terms of job employment, health that we could find locally, giving her an outlet. We developed a great relationship, and I'd talk to her maybe once a month, and she was on the pathway. Her son was no longer gang involved. Her son was wanting to become a French teacher. She had support with us. And eventually one day she called me after 6 months and she said, hey, Ron, I moved. And I said, great, where are you? And she'd moved closer to my office. So I said, hey, what do you need? And this is such an important question to ask people, because we assume what people need. We do a really good job of this overarching thing where we look down and we try to pity people and we say, oh, they need a job, they need money, they need income. I've learned that's not the truth. I asked her, I said, what do you need? What she needed was a dresser drawer for her kids' clothes because they had nothing. So I reached out to my network, and this is the power of social media and also the power of good people around you. I reached out to my network. I just said, hey, guys and girls, here's the situation. If there's anything you do to help. My old partner donated $500 in IKEA gift cards. There's a fireman moving company in Rexdale, which just moves furniture. They called me, said, we heard the story. We got a ton of furniture. Come and grab it. So I took a bunch of old partners. We went in, grabbed a bunch of furniture and dropped it off and delivered it to her. Now, what that did for her was incredible, but also the generosity of other people. Now, you'd be surprised. None of that had to do with, who our bosses were or us seeking approval. It had to do with person to person. And that's the biggest thing I can tell people is, look, if you want to get the job done, you have to work with the people and find out what they need. You need to ask them what they need. And then sometimes you need to scratch that lottery ticket to say, hey, look, you don't even know you realize this, or there's this opportunity here. But if you really want to make an impact, we need to get away from that idea of we need organizational impact and we need to have somebody who gets their PhD. Those people who come from this lifestyle and get that PhD, and I have a friend who's done that. Her name is Ronelle Bruder, survived sex trafficking, and now she's got her PhD. They are amazing and incredible people. That's a very high bar, very, very high bar. For us, we have to limit a success stream to what they define as success. A smaller example, so I don't take up too much of your time, but we had another gang-involved kid. He was involved in multiple shootings. He was somebody we only had to invest in for half an hour. Our number one question to gang-involved people, as well as people involved in human trafficking, is, do you have a social insurance number? And these are 18 and 19-year-olds. They don't have it. So we guide them through that process. Do we do the work for them? No. We give them the cheat sheet. We say, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. So we have a half an hour intervention with this kid who gets arrested and criminally involved. He goes out. We have a basic conversation. Same thing. Door's always open. Here's a phone number. Well, 6 months pass. We don't hear from this kid. All of a sudden, our office phone rings in the middle of the day. It's this kid, and he is ecstatic and over the moon. And why he's ecstatic is he got a social insurance number, and he got a job. His job was pushing in shopping carts from a grocery store. But for us and for this kid, that was an absolute home run. So if you're defining success as a PhD and an NBA contract and a music, contract, you're almost doing a disservice to the people who need the help, because For this kid, getting a job, bringing in shopping carts as an 18-year-old lifelong criminal, this was his pathway out, and he was so happy. And the best thing we could do is encourage it, empower him, and celebrate that as if he got an NBA contract. So I think for us, we need to pull back to what success is based on what we define it to be, and put it back more to what they define it to be. And whenever they have these home runs, we have to be their biggest cheerleaders all the time, because they're not receiving this anywhere in their life.
Wow. Thank you so much for those two incredibly powerful examples. And that word, that statement is ringing in my heart, that peer-to-peer support and refusing to assume. That is, we can't discover anything unless we ask questions. And just that human connection, that human celebration, and the willingness to see the simple successes that really, really bring real change. I am so inspired by those stories, and I'm sure you have so many more. We have a few minutes left, and there's a couple more questions here. One of the questions are, why are gang detectives not trained on the use of animal fighting to recruit gang members? Would you care to shed some light on this?
Yeah, that might be bigger in the United States, but in Canada, there's no indication through real world work as well as the academic evidence that this is a primary delivery mechanism of gangs or gang violence. Again, traditionally, it's not dogfighting. I mean, that's an additional part of the culture in the United States, but up here it's territory, debt and control. The problem is sometimes we find these little niche things, and people want to expose these niche things that are a small percentage and invest a lot of resources there. But before we do that, we have to really pay attention to what's in front of us. And what's in front of us is risk factors in the family, school, community, your peer group, and individual. Those are the big ones we need to focus on, because that's our biggest return on investment. And if we can attack those things like dogfighting, they're almost minuscule and non-existent.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Another question comes in and statement. First of all, Veronica, thanks you very much for your presentation as I speak on behalf of our team as well. Thank you for being here with us. What inspired you to get involved in this? Did you have a direct connection? And tell us a little bit more about that, because certainly your passion is quite profound.
Thank you. Yeah, I do. I have a very strong connection to it. It's very personal for me. Look, when I got into policing, I think I got into policing out of stubbornness. Okay, I applied 5 times. I had coaches that were cops, and they were like big motivators for me growing up as a kid, because I thought, they were tough, they were in shape, they were, always in charge, and I resonated with that, and I wanted to be that. But I had applied 5 times, and I didn't have a perfect childhood by any means. My parents went bankrupt when I was in grade 3, so for 7 years we moved around the worst areas. But they also became some of my best memories and my closest friends. And what happened is in my policing career, policing is very different, where, it's not about the money you make for certain people. For the large majority of police officers, it's not about the paycheck. It's about the title you have and the impact you can make. So you want to work in these specialized units. Well, within my first 10 years, I had worked in almost everywhere that I wanted to work. And I remember there was a series of small events that they're not small, but they were just a series of events. But I remember I was working in guns and gangs, and we had arrested this gentleman who, this was his 3rd time with a gun, and he was a big guy. And they called me and they said, "Look, Ron, can you hang out with him in the hallway while we continue to do a search warrant on his house?" And generally, that was my strength, was always building relationships with people. So I'm standing in the hallway with this older gang member, and as I'm looking in his hallway, I saw pictures of kids, and his kids were the same age as my kids. And for some reason, that just changed my perspective on a lot of things. So this was his 3rd time being arrested with a gun. And I looked at him and I said, I was like, "Hey, brother, like, you're going to go to jail for a long time now. And, those kids are going to miss you as being part of their life." And he didn't seem fazed by it. And I remember leaving, and it just sat with me differently. And I left Guns and Gangs at that time. Shortly after that, when I was asked to start this gang exit strategy, my best friend growing up, we didn't talk for 15 years, but he was caught discarding a dismembered body. He became very heavily involved in the gang lifestyle, and then he hung himself and killed himself in jail. That was at the very beginning of me getting into this gang exit strategy. And then a couple months after that, my other best friend growing up died of a drug overdose from fentanyl. So when I had done this research onto this, and I've lost some friends since, I recognized all of them in here. And more importantly, I recognize the solution. None of this needed to happen, but we really need to have a comprehensive global strategy focused on people. So that still is to my day the motivator. And when I talk to these young kids and these parents, just hearing how strong they are, a huge motivator for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Ron. We are out of time, but again, we appreciate everything you've shared with us, and we look forward to hearing more about your success stories as we move along in this incredible journey. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks, guys, for having me.
Okay, we're not live anymore, and we just have 30 seconds to just wrap up. And thank you. That was overwhelming. Just, I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time to chat, to talk, to hear more. And just one of the things that just continues to impact me is the fabric of care and love. You know, when you said the love languages, you're tapping into their soul to say, what is the way that love communicates to you? Because that's the only way to penetrate the hardest heart or the heavy mind. And so that certainly we can leverage from that in everything we do. And so again, I'm going to listen to your replay a few times because I just think there's so much value in everything you said. And thank you so much for being part of this.
Yeah, no problem. If you want, I have a podcast and a YouTube channel, and all these seminars and stuff I do, I put them on there for free.
Wow.
So it's for anybody to have. It's like the impactful. It's all there. I did it just to have, because I'd get so many requests and I couldn't facilitate it. I said, look, man, it's there. Just take it for free and do what you got to do with it. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Do we have those links and stuff? Do we have them?
I can send you an email
us?
with it. Yeah, I'll email to you guys and you guys can have it. Thank you so much, though.
Thank you. Have a great day, Ron.
You guys take care.
Bye.
Bye.